I'm in a very, very yellow jumper today, but it makes a difference from grey. So, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is, I suppose, specific to separated parenting and managing that, which if you are part of a blended family is quite difficult because there isn't a huge amount of support out there. You know, we all know that there's no manual when you become a parent, but there is especially no manual when you become a separated parent. So today is part of my parenting bit, and I'm going to be talking about basically, are they a good parent? And I know on this I've kind of called this, is he a good dad? The reason why is because obviously I am a woman, so you would kind of expect that I would have a child or children, I do have, with a man. Therefore I've worded it that way, but this is more, are they a good parent? I often see in separated families this kind of understanding, and I don't like to generalize, but it's more often seen in the primary caregiver, and there is an understanding that they are the main parent and they know best, and a kind of looking down on the other parent. And I guess I'm now 2.5 years into a blended family situation. I don't really know what to call it. It's separated parenting for 2.5 years now. And it took me a while to come to terms with what that meant. And I suppose it's very difficult because my own situation at this point in time is my children spend half the time with me and half the time with their dad. And at the moment that works for us, which is great. However, even if someone only sees their child for one weekend a month or one weekend a year or whatever, they are still just as much of a parent as you are. And I know that that can be really difficult to manage, because ultimately if you are the parent who is doing all of the work, you're doing all of the parenting, then how can that person possibly be as much of a parent as you are? What I would say is, from a child's perspective, that's absolutely true. A child doesn't love one parent more than the other. A child just loves both parents, and you will often see children who have been adopted or have had no contact with biological parents, but ultimately it's still a biological parent. That love still exists. There's still a drive to be accepted and loved. Sometimes children can't cope with that. Sometimes children can't cope that they love this person who, for example, may have left or may have stopped having contact or not have very much contact at all. And they can't cope with the fact that they love this person who also hurt them in that way. But ultimately they do. There can be a lot of difficulties around that. So from a child's perspective, the actual base level loving a parent is the same for both parents. Now, whether or not a parent does more for them, whether or not they have more respect for them, whether or not they have other emotions towards one parent because of day-to-day life, that's a different thing entirely. But the base level love, I think, generally is the same, the biological love for a parent. And there can be a lot of pain for children who don't get to spend time with their parents, and children can get really angry and feel very unloved by somebody else. And the reason why that's such a problem is because they unconditionally love caregivers, biological parents. So that's a bit of a I know. For the purposes of this video, for talking about whether or not someone is a good parent or not, ultimately the terminology of good is a value that can vary. So regardless of how good you think someone is, that's your perspective. People are all different, and people will parent in very different ways. And ultimately what is good is kind of almost not up for debate in a way. There are some parents that, for example, will put their children into boarding school, and there are some parents who will not do that. Is any parent better than the other for that process. No, it's just different choices for different people. They're still just as much of a parent. And I think this notion on what makes a good parent is kind of variable. You know, we have as a society changed a lot in our ideas of parenting over the years and what that means. Childhood is a construction that can change over time. Parenting and what that looks like is different across the globe. There are many tribes, for example, where there is no notion of a child being kind of this romanticized, protected, innocent thing. You know, from the minute that they're old enough, they assist and help out and are a contributing member of the tribe just like anybody else. So there's a huge range of notions that exist about parenting. And often we think that we know best, and things like bedtimes, them getting enough sleep, what they're eating, it can cause real issues between parents. And you can see a lot of, oh, well, I put them to bed at this time and they've not got enough sleep and they're coming to me and they're really tired. This notion of being better than someone at parenting. And actually, I would encourage you to consider that it's just different. And regardless of whether when that child sees that parent, they go to bed at 10 o'clock at night and eat McDonald's or whatever, that child gets to spend time with their other parent, and spending time with the other parent is the important thing. Now, ultimately, you know your child and what's best for them. Obviously, for this video, I'm not talking about parents and situations where there is abuse or anything like that. In that case, I would strongly suggest that you report it if you have any concerns whatsoever. There are many different places where you can seek support with that. But what I mean is that I often see, you know, or they went to their other parent's house, they came back and the kids were telling me this, and how can I manage that? And it is very difficult when you go from living with your children all the time and having an influence over every aspect of their life because you're with them every single day, compared to these periods where you don't have your children because they're with the other parent and not having any control over what happens. And it's also incredibly difficult if you have separated and there are feelings and stuff still going on, things are unresolved, there's anger towards each other or anything like that, because ultimately that is going to impact on your ability to communicate. And I would strongly say that the best way that you can separated parent, blended family, parent, children, however you want to put it, is with strong levels of communication. But that can be very, very difficult if you are, for example, still angry at each other, still judging each other, and still in a space where you cannot have that. I am very, very fortunate that the communication between myself and my children's dad is great. So we talk about stuff. If there's anything that I ever don't feel comfortable with, we can talk about it. And sometimes children as well can play parents off each other, so they might come back and they might word things in a way that isn't really reflective of what happened. And sometimes there is a need to step out of that and to kind of be the adult in that situation and have a conversation around, well, this is what they've said and I wanted to check, you know, what actually happened, and kind of hear the other parent. So I'm aware that this is a bit of a rambly video, but I suppose what I'm trying to get at is that there is no good parenting, so to speak. There is just doing your best, and the other parent may well just be doing their best too, but that ultimately those issues that are coming up within you of what's going on with this situation, why are my kids coming back like this, why are the kids saying this, why am I getting this vibe, all of those things are an indicator of poor communication. And if you are in a place, or if you can get to a place where you can communicate, then at least you can feel more comfortable. And it might be that the other parent is struggling with certain things, and maybe, you know, you can help. I don't know, you know, they're struggling with getting them to school on time or something, and maybe there are things that you can put in place to manage that between the two of you. Maybe you can change your arrangements. But it's all about communication at the end of the day. You know, you're two people who will hopefully get to a point where emotions and stuff aren't coming into things, and you can just support each other as parents, because depending on how old you are when you separate, you know, you've got the rest of your lives with that person involved to a point, because obviously they are the parent of your children or child. Each parent is entitled to parent to the best of their ability, and that may not look the same, but the important bit is to communicate. If something is really important to you, listen to each other, respect each other, allow each other to have opinions and views without shooting each other down. And I know that I'm saying all this and it's really, really difficult. I get that. And also, I'm very lucky that, like I said, we are in a situation where I don't have to manage someone who doesn't want to be involved with their children. And ultimately, children will make up their own mind. And when they're younger, obviously, they don't have a huge amount of input on these things. But as they get older, they can have more input on what they do and don't want. And they'll make their own mind up over who they want to spend their time with and who they want to be around and who they want to live with and how they feel about each parent. And I think the difficulty is that when you start to judge the other parent, you're putting down a child's parent possibly in front of that child. And even if it's not in front of that child, there are things that will kind of bleed through with you holding those types of judgment against someone. And ultimately, it's for the children to decide how they feel about someone and manage that. And the only thing that we really ever have control over is how we behave and what you feel comfortable with. And if you feel comfortable and happy with how you parent your children when you are with them, and if you feel uncomfortable with how they are with the other parent, then I would strongly suggest that you try some communication. If you're not able to communicate that, then potentially look at other things that you could put in place to become more comfortable with the time that they spend with the other parent. But you have to bear in mind that the needs of the child and your own needs are often going to be very different. And that's one thing that during parenting and separated parenting, I never really got for quite a long time, managing that balance between your own needs and the needs of your children, and how difficult that can be because they're often so different. But ultimately, I'm just the biggest fan of communication in the world. So if you can get to a point where you can communicate with their other parent, then that's got to be the way forward. I'm aware that this is a rambly video. I say this about nearly every video. But thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I hope that you're keeping safe and well wherever you are in these weird times, and I will catch you in the next one.